Hey girl, what you gonna do tonight? I've got my mama's car keys and you've got a ticket to ride.
Hello, and welcome to Your Favorite Flick, a podcast where each episode we celebrate a movie that my guests love. We aren't here to be critics, we're here to be fans. Wes McNeely of Houston, Texas joins us today. We're talking about The Third Man, a British-American co-production set in Vienna in the immediate aftermath of World War II. So, we have some cross-cultural flair at play in this thriller set amongst a city in rubble. Wes brings some specific experiences that are very relevant to this movie. Despite this show's liberal stance on spoilers, I'm going to hold off and let Wes explain those connections to it. This movie runs the emotional gamut from anxiety to mournfulness to humor, and we explore as much of it as an hour will allow. Enjoy. Wes McNeely, welcome to the show.
Hello, Brad. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How about yourself?
I'm having just a terrific day. It stopped raining, so you can't really hear it outside.
We do chat for a few minutes before we get going. And as you were telling me about yourself, this is our first meeting. You mentioned part of the reason this movie resonates with you. I was going to ask you up front, why The Third Man? And you kind of launched into it. So I'd love, please pick that up and let our audience know what your connection is to this movie.
Well, a big part of the story is this racket that's happening involving penicillin in Vienna, and they're diluting it. It's a whole thing. But one of the things they bring up is bacterial meningitis, and I am an epidemiologist. I'm in IT right now, but I have a master in public health, master in epidemiology, and I've investigated cases of bacterial meningitis. I know more than I really want to about it. The effects are devastating, and when there's a scene where they go to the hospital, and I can absolutely attest to the fact that if a child gets it, it's absolutely devastating, and if they're not treated, there's like a 60% chance that they're going to die. And if they do survive, oftentimes they're left with cognitive deficits. Occasionally, there will be amputations involved. And there's something called a petechia, which are these little purplish rashes that are all over the body. It's really horrible. It's devastating to the families, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying to families and to the community. So that's when public health steps in and really tries to get everybody get the medications and vaccinated. The vaccinations are kind of take a longer to take effect. It's the antibiotics that really help in the moment, but it's really dark, and you don't see movies about meningitis. I have been to Vienna, and I've read the short novel. When I saw it, it kind of hit me where I live.
I love hearing that, Wes, because it's such a different angle than I think most people come into this movie from. And this is a movie that introduces those stakes relatively late in the movie. Like there's
Yeah.
the incredible visit to the ward. But I wonder, like for you, because we do hear about it earlier,
Mhm.
maybe you were alerted to those stakes more than I was on a first viewing.
No, you don't really see the impact until, like you said, late in the movie. Before then, Major Calloway reveals that this is the racket the antagonist, Harry Lime, is involved in and involved with diluting penicillin. I had never heard of that, but I looked it up. It was a real thing back in post-war Europe. Penicillin was in very short supply, and I was like, my goodness, what a horrible thing. I mean, of all the things that you could do on the black market, not only to steal it for profit, but to dilute it and sell it as the whole thing. I mean, you're basically selling water. It just blew my mind.
It's interesting you say that. I was reading, and I can't claim I did deep research. This, if not on Wikipedia, it was on an immediate link from Wikipedia. But I was reading that while US and UK critics engage with this largely as a mystery story, in Austria and in Central Europe, it was really received as a commentary on the present and the sins of the past, which to my mind speaks to what you're saying, that it's based on real things, both literally and kind of emotionally.
It's as real to form as you can get for a movie. They filmed it in post-war Vienna. Obviously, I think it came out in '49, so they must have been filming in '48. But Vienna and Austria was under occupation. It's interesting. It's only one of two cities that were under occupation from the four powers. The other being Berlin. And of course, the countries were as well. That stuff was right in their face because Germany consumed, they invaded and really just kind of took over Austria in 1938 during the Anschluss and considered Vienna to be and Austria to be just part of Greater Germany. So it was very much a morality tale. I can definitely see why they would say that.
One of the things I love in great movies, and look, I don't think I'm going outside of general opinion to say this is one of the greatest ever, is that it can be looked at from different angles. You know, there's not
Correct.
just one point of view.
And the perspective change as I've read about the cinematography, things get weirder as the film progresses. So there are many different ways. In fact, I was really overwhelmed with the amount of material on just YouTube and the internet stuff to read. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. You can really go down rabbit holes. So I wound up just watching like one or two videos, 10 things you didn't know about the third man.
Now, look, one good thing on this show, Wes, is we're not attempting to be the definitive authority on any movie we cover. We're here to talk about why we love the movies. If you remember, when did you first see this one?
I don't remember. And let me just give you a little background on that. For a long time, I had always kind of regarded, I would tell people when they ask me, what's your favorite movie? I would say Alien, the Ridley Scott version, and then The Music Man. And that's in line with my funny personality. Is how can you have such two disparate movies be your top? And that was like that for the longest time. And then I don't know how I heard about it. I was just reading something and it was just suggested like you got to catch the third man. And I was just blown away. Like everything else in my top 10, I mean, they should be like top maybe 10 to 20, and then all the slots 1 through 10 should be the third man. And I don't know why. I don't know why it resonates with me. I do have a kind of a dark sense of humor. I have a dark personality. I just like the angst and drama and unease. I don't like happy endings. So it
Oh, we'll get to that because this is one of the great endings, right? One of the
oh,
great final shots.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's nothing redeeming about the film. It's like in Seinfeld, they said, we're not going to learn anything in Seinfeld. That there's no learning, there's no hugging. We just feel awful at the end. And you're not going to feel awful if you watch it. Don't get the idea. You're just going to be amazed.
So, Wes, you kind of outlined the stakes for us in terms of the scam with the diluted vaccines or antibiotics. Can you give us a little just capsule outline of how the movie's set up and plot in 2 minutes or less?
So it's basically this fella, Holly Martins, literally rolls into town, into Vienna. He's an American. He has an American friend he hasn't seen since before the war named Harry Lime. He comes into a town, and Harry has evidently offered him a job. Holly is a broke author. He writes westerns. Harry is dead. He finds out. He goes to his apartment and finds out. In fact, they're having his funeral right now. So you go to the funeral and you kind of meet most of the main characters there. Major Calloway takes Holly out for a couple of drinks because he's depressed and kind of gets him a little drunk and then says, hey, by the way, your best friend, he was a jerk. He was one of the worst racketeers in all of Europe. He doesn't tell him what he was doing. Holly goes nuts. He tries to hit him and then Holly goes on this quest to exonerate his dead friend, Harry Lott. And I forget exactly which point Major Calloway says, hey, by the way, this is the reason, this is what's going on with Harry Lime. This is what he's been doing. And it's this penicillin racket. Then there's this internal struggle where Holly, he's back and forth. Am I going to help the police? Am I not going to help the police? All and all in the middle of this, you've got this drama with Anna, who we learn is not Austrian, but she's Czechoslovakian. And the Russians, because it's a divided city, the Russians want to deport her back to Czechoslovakia. So do I tell the ending?
Yeah, we are a spoiler podcast. You can't talk about favorite movies without getting into to the whole
Correct.
thing.
So the major says, and by the way, Major I was trying to get Holly to leave. He keeps offering him plane fare and plane tickets. And it's like, okay, the plane's leaving in an hour. Holly at the end doesn't want to do it. That's when Major Calloway says, let's stop by the hospital. I just want to. And then when he sees the devastation of what Harry has done with the penicillin on these children who are dying or suffering terrible effects. That's when
I should say too,
Holly says, "Yeah, I'll do it."
let me jump in on that, Wes. In a scene of amazing restraint, because we never see any of the children, we just see the curtains around these beds they're in.
Ba-da-ba-da.
We see the stuffed animals, including those that have clearly been discarded
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
children died. And it
What's great?
just this whole movie's full of incredible visual filmmaking, but that scene just blows me away every time I see it.
What's great about the film is all the things that you don't see that you have to infer. That's real movie making right there, man. I love movies, and this is just one of my asides. Is there's a lot of CGI these days, and I, and nothing substitutes good storytelling. And sometimes it's not what you say, but it's what you don't say, and not what you see, but what you don't see, that can really make that impact. You don't have to imagine gore and disfigurement and death. We've got imaginations, and all you have to do is set the scene.
One thing that has emerged as a mini running theme just over the first 20 some episodes of this show is how vital to creativity constraints are. It would have been a very difficult thing to show in any kind of realistic seeming way, these horribly stricken children, both because of technological constraints, but also because of, in the US, the Hays Code, but sort of similar morality codes in other countries. So it's a great example of, okay, we can't show that. No, look, maybe they wouldn't have chosen to, even if they could, but we can't do that. So how do we illustrate this in a moving way? And then they found a way that I think might have been more moving than if we had been more head on confronted with the horror.
Absolutely. They did it just right. They really did it well.
To kind of wrap us up there, that takes Holly to where he eventually decides to work with the police. He offers the trade for her to get her passport back and escape town, which she ultimately refuses, but Holly goes through with the sting. But I'm going to switch things around I had here in my question order a little bit because from what we've said about the plot, I fear that some people might think this movie is dire or really emotionally difficult. And for me, this movie is hilarious. Like, not to say it's just a comedy, but the comic elements are amazing in it.
Well, absolutely. I really don't know where to start. We could start with just the music because
Please.
the spoiler on this one is that the soundtrack, it was all written by this fellow named Anton Karas, and he plays the zither. He was discovered by Selznick or Reed. I can't remember who discovered him. I think it was Reed.
I think it was
Uh,
Reed.
and he was just playing in this coffee house or someplace. And it was like, oh, I like that. And long story short, he wound up making the whole thing. And it's all in the zither. And the score is just, it's jaunty. That's the only word I can think of. Obviously, there's different songs. It's not the same song, just in different styles. But the overall setting is just kind of this light, airy da 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 da. And it kind of reminds me of I like certain types of songs like ballads. Ode to Billy Joe. It's this nice lyrical thing, and it's just describing horrible things that are taking place. But it's almost absurdist. It's contrast between this light Johnny melody and these terrible things that are going on. I mean, there are a lot of people that die in this film. But no, you're absolutely right. It's not dire. It does kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. You're like, what is going to happen next?
There's also some dialogue in this. I mean, Graham Greene, one of the great writers of the 20th century. I'm saying great so many times about this movie, y'all. It just is how I feel. So you're gonna have to live with an audience. You're gonna hear great a lot. Lines that I think of or made note of last night, like when he tells the head of the literary society that his friend died, and he says, "Goodness, that's awkward," and Howie's response is that what you say to people after death? Goodness, that's awkward.
Yeah, that's in my notes too. What's his name? Not it was Craven was the head of the BCQHMG or where it was. It was like we want you to talk about your books, and we have a little show every week. That guy was hilarious. One of the funniest scenes was when was having to do with this character. There's a taxi that pulls up, and and Holly needs a taxi. He wants to go somewhere. I forget where he wants to go. And he says, yeah, come in, come in, come in. And then the guy takes off on a tear. He doesn't speak English. Holly says, are you here to kill me? And then they roll up and he's not taking him to kill him. He's taking him to the BCM QHB, whatever that talk was. And then he just absolutely bombs it. These people are looking for erudite. And they talk about James Joyce and stream of consciousness. And Holly's like, I write Western novels. And it's so funny. But then it goes from there, it goes right into a very tense scene where you got the bad guys chasing him.
I love that that scene before the literary society is funny, but it's a funny that's really tinged with not just awkwardness, but anxiety. So it really feeds into what the movie's doing on that high anxiety level, while at the same time being hilarious. It also, Wes, struck me how different the reception would be for a pulp novelist now in the post Tarantino era, where like there's a respect for pulp fiction, if you will, where like it's, if a Zane Grey type went and spoke, if he were still living, went and spoke before the European Literary Society now, they'd probably be all over themselves with excitement.
Probably so, but they were not in the mood for that. The crowd there really fit in with what I think the Viennese think of themselves as being very intellectual people, very cultured, erudite. They're really, and from what I understand, that at the time, the Viennese really didn't like this movie because it put their city and the people in not the most positive of light. It showed them as being poor, and the city is being bombed about a bit, as it were. So I feel like this is of all the scenes, this was really kind of a good insight into the character of the Viennese people.
And let's talk about that use of Vienna a little bit. As I understand it, I mean, location shooting was much less common in general then, but as I understand it, for a British film to shoot, on location anywhere outside of the UK was almost unheard of.
That's right.
What
That's right.
what does the on location bring to this movie that would not have been achievable without that?
Well, I'm going to read you a quote from Roger Ebert. It said, Vienna in The Third Man is a more particular and unmistakable place than almost any other location in the history of movies. The action fits the city like a hand slipping on a glove. I think that's perfectly summarizes the feel of Vienna, what it meant to be there. I don't think you could have done it anywhere else. It wouldn't have made nearly as an impact because you gotta have that. Vienna was bombed. It was heavily bombed by the Allies. There was a whole battle from April to March of 45 when the Russians liberated the city. It took a month to actually capture Vienna. So it was heavily bombed, and you see pictures of the destruction and rubble laying everywhere. And so it's part of the character of the movie. You couldn't do it. It's well known that parts of it were filmed in London because Orson Welles had a thing about being in the sewers. He didn't want to be in the Vienna sewers.
Breaking news for our audience: Orson Welles was a huge pain in the ass in general. Just calling cards.
But I mean, you couldn't do it with that. It was perfect. I know that they had other people lined up, but my goodness, he just knocked it out of the park. There's so many aspects I wish I could talk about this movie. There's just not enough time. But getting back to Vienna, it was the right choice. It was the only choice. And that's what makes it special. And another thing, little trivia. From what I understand, they intentionally watered down the streets and at night so they could get the light bouncing off of the cobblestones. Lots of shots of cobblestones. Lots of shots, exterior shots at night. So I mean, we just go on and on. The cinematography, the acting, the script, the story. Tell me more about what you want to talk about, Vienna.
You're hitting so much of it, Wes, but also the monumental aspect of Vienna. I haven't been fortunate enough to go there. My wife has, but these amazing shots of buildings and even just these ornate columns. Never mind that it wouldn't look great in CGI anyway, but in a pre-CGI era, there's no way you were capturing that at Shepperton Studios in England. I love what Ebert said there. It really does bring you to a time and place. When he wrote it, it was true. I would say still true now, at least as well as any other movie does. I went and reread his great movies review of it, which he wrote in, I think, the late 90s when he was putting together that list. And he talks about seeing this in Paris in a little left bank movie theater, but this, like, essentially being his activating event of he's just all in on movies, that, like, movies are his life
Really?
after seeing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, I guess I didn't. I know I've read it at some point, but I didn't read that part. That's an amazing fact. That's an amazing detail right there. Just just
Yeah.
just just the impact of that on such a great writer. I
Yeah,
love.
I owe a lot of my love of film and discovery of more and more classic film throughout my life to watching and reading Ebert. So I always loved to see what his opinion was.
Yeah, yeah. I want to make sure that we do hit the final part. A big part of the city is what they call the sewers. It's really something called the Wien Canal, which was an underground waterway in Vienna where the runoff, like the storm drainage, would run off into the Danube. They call it the sewer, but it's not. And they do have special police. I don't know if they still do, but they certainly did then. And I think some of them were involved in the making of the movie. The ending of the movie takes place in these underground, for lack of a better word, I'll call them sewers. And that's where they chase Harry down in there. He's running away. And finally, he meets his end. And I won't go into all the detail, but it's poignant and it's sad. I just want to get to Harry Lime and talk about what a rat he was. Oh my goodness. He died like a rat, and that's where he belonged, because that guy,
Why,
first of all,
why don't we actually start with how he died? So the audience knows what you mean by that.
Holly killed him. He's been shot by Calloway in the sewer, and then he's crawling, trying to get out. His fingers go up in this great shot to the clutching onto the grate above him that he can't get out of.
A shot that I think inspired 300 horror movies after that. You know, those
Yeah,
fingers reaching
I was
through the
thinking,
grate.
I was thinking of Omen. Uh, by the time he's been shot, before that, he had just shot Sergeant Payne, also one of the great characters, who, by the way, went on to play M in the James Bond movies.
Yeah, for like the
Um,
first 11 of them.
yeah, yeah.
Long
So
run.
he was Bond's boss, and his accent is totally different. So he's a well-established act. But he shoots Sergeant Payne, and then how Calloway shoots Harry. So Holly goes after Harry, and he's probably mortally wounded at that time. Harry is, but he just kind of nods to Holly, and Calloway says, "Don't take any chances. Shoot if you get the chance." And he does. He shoots Harry off screen. You just
Yeah.
hear the report of the gunshot.
Then you see Holly walking back like through the smoke or the steam in the
Yeah,
sewers. And I
yeah.
think about that like he has become the Lone Rider of Santa Fe, his book that's mentioned so many times throughout.
And well, here I gotta watch that scene again that you're talking about. Harry and Holly had been buddies since what, college or something? Holly had not seen Harry since before the war, 39, he said. And what you learn is that Harry was Holly's best friend, as he said. But you come to find out how that he was always doing something dirty or illegal, or he was cheating on a test, or he was getting away with something. On the Ferris wheel, he says, it was great for you, but not for me, meaning that he probably got caught. But Harry, first of all, kills a bunch of people. He's a racketeer, and he's responsible for the deaths of those kids. But he threatens and probably wanted to kill Holly on the Ferris wheel. He's so blithe. He's so smug. And he talks about that great speech, one of the two great speeches. He says, look down there when they're up in the Ferris wheel, look down there at those dots. He's talking about the people walking around. They look like ants or something. If somebody offered you 20,000 pounds and those dots stop moving, how many dots do you think that you could afford? Just totally cold blooded. He doesn't care anything about Anna. He doesn't care. In fact, he turned Anna in to the Russians. He's living in the Russian zone. The Russians are using him, and he turns in Anna, who he had arranged to have her passport forged. He's such a slimy character, so banal.
I get the impression among all that he's still kind of a two-bit gangster or racketeer. Like, he's gotten into this one big scam, but, like, you don't get the sense that he's, like, the mob boss of Vienna or even of a section of it.
He's petty. He just lucked into this thing,
Yeah.
and he's a smooth talker. He's very charming. He found an easy score and he was like, I can do this. This is not a problem. It's just horrible. So he had the ending that he deserved.
Last night, I was really thinking about this visually. Now, of course, he's got the Orson Welles oily charm that he could turn on so well.
Yeah.
At this stage in his life, with his plumpness, but not as overweight as he became, and clean shaven in this, he doesn't just look boyish. He literally looks like a grown baby.
Cherubic. Yeah. He's
Yes.
definitely. And speaking of cherubs, I do want to talk about the little boy, the 4-year-old boy. I don't know if they're supposed to be that contrast, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, he looks suave. He looks dapper. He's been living like a king in that apartment. My goodness, that flat he had in Vienna was just ostentatious. He had been doing very, very well for himself.
That flat reminded me, it's not quite as ostentatious as this, but it reminded me of Amadeus when we spend all the time in the palaces in Vienna. It had a similar feel to it, frankly.
Getting back to Vienna, I have been to Vienna. I grew up. My parents are missionaries, and I grew up in Zambia. We moved over to Zambia when I was 11, and then I went to high school the last 2 years in Kenya. So my dad was always really good about making sure that when we were traveling through Europe to get to Africa and vice versa, that we always stopped and spent a few weeks in Europe. A lot of families didn't do that. They were just trying to get back home and get back to the field. But dad really made it so to where we visit a lot of countries. And that's one of the places that we visited. And it is just a charming, charming city.
That's my understanding. It's on my very, very short list of places I want to get to. When we go to Europe, I keep ending up in Paris. I love it so much that, but need to venture beyond. We've talked some about the visuals that being in Vienna provides. I love that you mentioned the running down the streets. This is one of the first examples I've read of that. That became a trademark mark of cinematographers like Kaminsky later. The Polish cinematographers in general tend to use that, like wedding down the street, the pools of light. You see here. Um, Talk to me a little bit about the visual style of this movie. I mean, I think there's a lot, but what grabs you visually from a camera perspective here?
Well, okay, I know where you're going with this. Dutch angles.
There you go.
There are these, and I think he was pretty innovative with this, the cinematographer. And by the way, he did win an Oscar. They were nominated for 3 Oscars, and they won for cinematography. But yeah, the cinematographer has this thing where he gets low down, kind of a low perspective, and he shoots the camera up and he tilts it slightly. And it was, from what I understand, it was pretty novel way of doing things. And the angles got worse after Harry Lime reappears. They come more frequently. And from what little I read about it, it conveys a sense of unease, kind of dread. It lets you know that things are just slightly off kilter. The other thing that he uses well is shadows. There's a lot of shadow work. There's a lot of backlighting on the streets where you'll see a figure coming. You'll see the shadow of a person appear before the person appears. Hilariously, with the balloon man, you think something's going to happen. And it's this old fella selling balloons while they're trying to do this sting.
And
And
it's this imposing shadow that looks bigger than anything in the world, and we think it's line coming, and no.
and they have to buy a balloon to get rid of it. Like, get out of here, Scarper. Yeah,
The cinematographer's name is Robert Krasker. Interestingly, he's an Australian, which this is
that's right.
well before Australian cinema really broke through.
Oh, what?
Thing I want to throw in with Krasker's work here, and giving him and Carol Reed credit because they clearly work together, is a lot of movies, especially now, use Dutch angles. And for anybody who doesn't know, that basically means like the camera's turned at an angle, usually less than 45 degrees, but maybe somewhere around 30 degrees to the action. One thing I love is how they frame that against the architecture so much. And the Viet architecture, while beautiful and ornate, has these wonderful straight lines to it, huge like stairways. They use features in the background. And so that it really shows off the canning because it's like we've got these horizontal lines cutting the space. The other thing I wanted to bring up in terms of the cinematography, but also the shot selection, so many amazing close-ups on faces, many of whom I assume are Viennese actors. It seems like you recognize the same thing. What do you feel like that brings to the movie?
But I know it had an impact on me. That's all I can say is that you zoom in, and I have one in particular image in my mind of this man. He's very gaunt. He's wearing some kind of a worker's beret or something like that. And it's part of a sequence of close-ups. I think it was in the scene when everybody were outside just after the porter had been murdered in that crowd. And they're just these gaunt faces.
And one thing I love about the faces here is it's a reminder that there is a Vienna going on all around this. This is the story we're watching, but this is to go to Casablanca. This is the problems of two people don't amount to a hill of beans in the grand scheme of what's going on in the Vienna of the time.
Yeah, we think it's all about us. Man, there stuff is going on all around us. The dramas, little and big, that we have no idea of what's happening in a person's mind, in their family, in their life. And it makes you really sit back. Each one of these individuals, they have their own inner world. They have people that love them, people that they love. And we're just passengers on this train that's going along. But we're just here for the ride. And if we get to see a glimpse of how someone lives, that to me is a blessing. And it's sometimes it's stark and scary, but it's wonderful. And it reminds you really that we need to stop talking and maybe listen a little bit, watch, have fun, observe, take in your surroundings. My goodness, take in your surroundings. They filmed this movie during the occupation. Vienna was occupied until 1955. They had their own government from the end of the war, not like Germany. Germany was governed by whoever was occupying them, but Austria had their own government, and the occupiers left in 55. But they were filming this in what, 48? So that means that they were filming in an occupied city. Those shots at the beginning were real. So these people were experiencing the conditions that are set up when the movie was shot.
That there are even rumors, though nothing substantiated, that the shot of the body floating in the Danube was something they came across.
I wouldn't doubt it. It looked real to me. Fooled me.
Great line over that, by the way, that we didn't even mention.
Can we talk about quotes a little bit?
Yeah,
Um,
please.
you mentioned the whole thing about goodness, that's awkward, hilarious. Of course, Martin talks about his victims, and Lime gives that soliloquy about if I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot. Then there's Lime where he talks about Italy for 30 years under the Borgias. They had terror, warfare, bloodshed, and murder, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? Cuckoo clock. So long, Holly. Calloway says next time we'll have to have a foolproof coffin. By the way, Holly is in love with Anna, and she hangs out with him, but she's increasingly disenchanted. Martins gets her laugh. He says, "That's the first time I ever saw you laugh. Do it again." And she gets this look on her face and said, "There isn't enough for two laughs."
Yeah.
Alina Valli, she's Italian, neither Austrian nor Czech, but she's just so lovely in that getup where she's in the theater where he first talks to her. She's really dolled up. From what I understand, they made her more frumpy. Selznick wanted her, David O. Selznick, the producer, wanted her to be more glamorous. And Carol Reed is like, no, I want her to dress down. I don't want her to be glamorous. And they did a great job with humanizing. But you can see how glamorous she is when she's in that 17th century getup and she's doing that play. She's just such a wonderful.
When you were talking about Lime's character and that he seems to have always been that way, Holly has a line describing him. When he was 14, he taught me the 3-card trick. That's growing up fast. And part of what I love about that line, is he referring to Lime growing up fast? Is he referring to Lime imposing growing up fast upon him? Or little column A, little column B?
I think it's both. But I think Harry was a rat from the beginning, and Holly got a lesson from him. And I think Holly was talking about himself. I think he said that I kind of grew up around that.
I think there's a little wistfulness for a childhood lost in that. I just want to say quickly, I don't think we've called out Joseph Cotten by name yet. Joseph Cotten plays Holly, one of my favorite actors of that era. He and Wells teamed so memorably in Citizen Kane. Shadow of a Doubt, one of my favorites with him. But he also could do comedy. He did a little bit as the straight man. He did the Philadelphia Story as kind of the other man. Just an amazingly well-rounded actor of the era. But anyway, take us to the little boy. I feel like we could do a whole episode on the little boy sequence, Wes.
Interestingly, he just died. He was the youngest, obviously the youngest person. His name is Herbert Halbeck, and he was Hansel in the movie. He was 4 years old when they found it. And he has this little cherubic face. He's got a cute, sweet grin. But he sees early in the movie Holly and the porter arguing. He's just standing in the doorway. He's following a soccer ball, and he sees them arguing. And so later, when the porter is murdered and they come upon this, I think they want to go back to Harry's apartment and talk to the porter again. There's this crowd, and they're saying, "Oh, he's dead." And the little boy fingers Holly, and he's talking in German, and he's saying, "Papa, Papa." And he does this thing with his finger across his throat that is the most chilling, I think is the most chilling part of the whole movie when he goes, you know, and
It's basically the gesture that the NFL outlawed like a decade ago because it was creepy when NFL players were doing it.
yes. And so Holly's going, "What's going on?" And Anna fills him in and says, "They think you're the one that murdered him." So anyway, great scene. That kid was another one of those faces that gets a close up. But
And for the audience, the kid then leads a chase of Holly through the streets. It's not just that he accuses him, he's running ahead of the crowd, of the mob, basically, with this bouncing ball chasing
yeah,
Holly.
exactly. To me, that's hilarious too. It's darkly humorous. By the way, I did want to mention that for non-German speaking viewers, obviously this was a movie that was made for English speaking audiences. They did not have subtitles.
So interestingly, I looked at this last night. Carol Reed, the director, did not even speak German. So this, like, yeah, the intent of the movie is for us not to understand that. Like, obviously, there's people who understand both languages who may get it, but this movie, you mentioned discombobulation. I have the word disorienting in notes about 15 times. This
Yeah,
movie wants us off balance throughout.
correct. The angles, the cinematography, the shadows, so you're not relaxed, I guess, for lack of a better word. It wants to put you at a point of unease. And I liken it to a Hitchcock movie. It's very Hitchcockian in that way, with tension and suspense. And so you want to preserve that with the original. And by the way, there was an American version that had 11 minutes cut out. I mean, a different narration at the beginning, but the version that you see today is the original British version.
The opening narration in the original British one is Carol Reed.
Correct.
You know, the great sloppy voice. I've not seen the American version.
I'm curious about the other 11 minutes that are missing, but I have no interest in seeing the American version. I really like what's available now.
I would only want to see it in the sense of loving the movie so much and being something of an amateur film historian. But yes, I don't see any way it could improve on things, and I don't think anybody says it does.
Speak.
So we talked briefly about one of the great entrances in cinematic history, and Harry Lime in that doorway. The cat discovers him. We see black leather dress shoes as the cat rubs against him, and the light come on, and there's Orson Welles. And I thought last night, like you said, there were other actors that were possibilities here. Part of what makes that work is even before he says Harry, we know that, hey, that's Orson Welles. That couldn't be anybody but Harry. Like, as an audience at the time, I think we just know that.
Oh. Absolutely. There's no question. Like he's been ever present. That's all they've been talking about. And suddenly this new face, he's hanging outside, kind of shadowing a drunken Holly, and it couldn't be anybody else. And yeah, just I remember I do remember the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my, what how great is that?
And I just, well, not that that scene couldn't be good if he did have to be identified for us, but it's that extra impact. It's a long time ago, probably as a teenager, I first saw this. But I am 99% sure that in that moment, it was, oh, of course, this is Harry.
And again, it's a close up. His face, as I recall, fills the whole frame, and he's got that stupid, gosh darn smirk on his face. Like you just want to slap it right off of him.
You do, and it slowly breaks into the full smile that kind of has the, you caught me look to it. Orson Welles, besides being a pain in the ass, which we've established, also a pretty good actor.
Barely so, it seems. He had his talents. I think he was marvelous. A lot of the great ones, they are pains to work with.
It's that artistic temperament. I want to take us from there because, as you correctly identified, one of the great entrances, we mentioned briefly one of the great final shots in film history, too.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. It's all leading up to that. My goodness, what that's capped it off for me. I was like, okay, that's done. You're at the top of the list now after
well,
that
why
scene.
can you talk us through that one, Wes?
So it starts off with them going to the second funeral of Harry Lime, kind of a repeat of the first one. And once again, Holly has a plane to make, and he's in the Jeep with Calloway, and he's like, "Can't you do anything for her? She's already missed the train once, basically." And I forget what Calloway says, but
I think he says, "I'll do what I can." He's
I'll
not
do what I
fully committal.
basically, she's her own person, and she's clearly just done with everybody. So Holly asks, "Can you stop the car?" And he's like, "All right, whatever." So there's this shot, this perfect shot. It's almost Wes Andersonian, if that's the word, with the tree line. It's looking down the street. I guess those are elms or poplars or something lining the street. It's a winter shot. And he's about, I don't know, 50, 75 yards ahead of Anna. And she's heading towards the camera right in the middle of the street. Gonna get run over because she didn't watch out. And Holly is just waiting for some reaction. And she walks by. It's a long shot. She's walking and walking and walking. And you're waiting for it. And you're like, oh, they're gonna leap into each other's arms. She walks right past him, right past the camera, and he just lights up a cigarette, and that's it. And it's
And the camera
devastating.
stays static, so he's way over on screen left,
Yeah,
lighting this cigarette and just tossing the match.
it's just like, man, there's no redemption here. It's almost like everybody's worse off for all that they've experienced. Holly is still unemployed. He still doesn't have a dime to his name. He fell in love with this girl that absolutely despises him now. And on top of that, he probably missed his plane. But it's just a knife in the heart that is so satisfying. I can't describe to you how satisfying. I could see this movie over and over again, and it's the same way. One of the phrases that I read somewhere when I was looking all this stuff up was that the theme was about what was the theme? Existential loss and betrayal, right? Existential loss and betrayal. That's the punch in the gut. It's just so sad.
And both Graham Greene in the novella, which was apparently more of a treatment for the movie that was then published as a novella, and David O. Selznick both desperately wanted it to end with an embrace, and Carol Reed really stuck to his guns. And look, nothing in that scene could make this movie bad, but that would feel like such a betrayal of the
Yeah.
existential nature of what's going on here.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just an amazing bit of acting, an amazing bit directing, and amazing cinematography, and not a word spoken. Just absolute perfect ending.
Especially in an ending when the The director, and I'd say just director, when all the creative people involved let the camera do the work, they trust it. You pointed out very early that this movie couldn't have been set or shot anywhere else. Like Berlin, as you mentioned, was the only city that was somewhat like it in being a divided and controlled city. But Berlin would have been too culturally loaded at that point, and
Oh my
appropriately
goodness.
so,
Oh my
as
goodness.
not to say Austria was innocent during World War II, but there's not the same emotional load than if you set a movie in the capital of Germany at that point.
Yeah, I think it would necessarily have to be all about the war, and that's not what this movie's about. It's not about the war. It's about things that happened in the aftermath, and so I think it just strikes that balance just right.
I love how you said that because there's a lot of movies that are about post-war, but are really about the war itself. And that's not a bad thing. But this movie is about the post-war. It's about, to a degree, the trauma a city experiences. But the trauma of the characters doesn't really have to do with the war. It has to do with what they're experiencing in the post-war.
Correct, correct. Division, people, occupation zones. Interestingly, Russia is not treated as quote unquote the bad guy. You can see a little bit of about that, them wanting to deport Anna, but they're not really. In fact, the guy that plays the Russian major or whatever he is or colonel, he comes across as a very nice fella. But they had to deal with that. Can you imagine living in a Soviet occupied zone of a divided city? Their lives were just torn apart, absolutely torn apart. I want to just thank you and just put it out there that it's clear that I'm not a movie buff. I'm not even a movie nerd. I am just really just a fan. And that's why I like your podcast so much is you don't have to get so deep. Everybody can research this stuff, but there's still a lot going on in this movie that we haven't even come close to touching on.
Oh, no, and like I said, that's why there is no aim to be the definitive source on a movie. One thing I often tell people, because I have people when they come to the podcast, even who've come on a guest, are like, "Oh, I don't know movies that well." First of all, you don't need to be particularly knowledgeable. Who doesn't have a favorite movie, right? Even if you don't care about movies in general. But also, and I mean this very genuinely, like when people tell me, "Oh, I'm trying to get more into them," I'm kind of jealous because it's like you're trying to get to watch Jaws for the first time. Like, how freaking amazing would that be to sit down and watch Jaws for the first time? That's it for this one, folks. I'm Brad Glazer. I host, produce, and edit the show. Thanks go out to Brad Kaufman, who connected us with Wes, and the rest of the Brain Trust. Julia Mott, Vienna waits for you. The music you hear at the beginning of the show and now is by my friend Richard Pate and his band The Huns. That's Hons. You can find The Huns music on Bandcamp. This Wednesday, the dead speak. Jeff Glazer is back on the show for what he has termed an emergency episode in celebration of Top Gun's 40th anniversary re-release. Jeff's going to tell us about how one of the most celebrated movies of all time is actually severely underrated. And you know what? He makes a good case. Please follow, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, all the things. Those reviews in particular, no matter how long or short, really help us reach more people. You can follow us on Instagram at YourFavoriteFlick, on Letterboxd at FavoriteFlick, or shoot us an email at yourfavoriteflick@gmail.com. Huns, take us out.
Made crazy, stupid money for crazy, stupid things. Is that any part of keeping your heart? If I spent those same days brushing up on poetics, that's 14 times 365 inflection.